So, I was doing some research on this country, and I found a video of this.
Appunto come che vengo salito e sto qua a Torino a visitare la città con mio amico Pietro Cozzanzic e Simone.
Okay, the video isn't all that exciting. It's just 3 Italian guys talking to each other and having a good time. But then you notice the title. Speaking, 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 Lombard, Piedmontese, Venetian. Interesting. A little more research, and I found a map like this, the languages of Italy. You might notice something missing from this map. There's no language here called Italian. While this map is useful, this one shows us a different picture. Let me explain this apparent discrepancy. When we use the word Italian, we're referring to a very specific language, the Florentine dialect of the Tuscan language from the 12th to 13th centuries that was later standardized in the 16th century. This situation is interesting because since the language that Italian was based on is so old, the modern Florentine dialect is actually quite different from Italian. The country of Italy is a relatively new one, having only been founded in 1861. At that time, the United States was nearing its first century as a nation. I tell you this because in 1861, only 2.5% of the 25 million people living in Italy actually spoke Italian. Linguistic homogeneity is a modern concept. Before unification, most countries on the Italian peninsula didn't have the infrastructure or the need to educate everyone in this special language called Italian. Let's take this example at the French-Italian border. This is the town of Nevèche on the French side, and this is the town of Bardonecchia on the Italian side. Here is the road that connects them. The question is simply, what language do these towns speak? Modern-day logic might tell us that Nevèche speaks French and Bardonecchia speaks Italian. But does that really make sense? The road that connects them is only 8 miles long. Is it possible that this totally permeable border dictates what language they speak? Now, if we return to 1861, both of these towns speak the same language, Occitan, a third and distinct Romance language. But 1861 was a long time ago, and the sad truth is that today, Occitan faces extinction, and Occitan speakers are most likely in the minority. So is our modern-day logic true? Has the 20th century wiped out linguistic diversity in this area? Well, to an extent. What might be the most accurate map is something like this, where speech in Nevèche is influenced by French, Italian, and Occitan, and Bardonecchia's speech is influenced by Italian, French, Occitan, and another local language, Piedmontese, ultimately making communication between Nevèche and Bardonecchia possible. But this map is a massive oversimplification. All it does is show some linguistic influences of the area and does nothing to show multilingualism, where different people in each community may speak some of the different languages of the area, or polyglossia, where these languages exist on a sliding scale that moves depending on context. So if someone from Nevèche wants to speak to someone from Paris, they can change to a more standard French. But in speaking to someone from their own town, they might move their speech closer to Occitan. Italy has 2 main linguistic boundaries, one that divides the northern Gallo-Italic languages from the southern Italo-Dalmatian languages, and a second that divides the highly divergent Sardinian language from the rest of Italy. In addition to this, there is one main political boundary in Italy that divides northern Italy from southern Italy, where the north has been and still is the more well-off part. Notice that this political divide does split the Italo-Dalmatian languages around the more prosperous capital region where Rome is located. A small aside, because of southern Italy's disadvantaged state, southern Italians were also more likely to immigrate to other countries. This is especially noticeable in the United States, where many of the things Americans consider stereotypically Italian, like pizza, cannoli, spaghetti, and even terms like mafia, are Sicilian or Neapolitan in origin. Today, no matter where you're born in Italy, if you go through the Italian education system, you will learn Italian. But the language spoken at home and with friends is not always the same as the one learned in school. Millions of people around the world learn language without formal schooling. If a man from Venice speaks the Venetian language, he might choose to speak in Venetian to others he knows from Venice. But if a tourist comes from Milan, Naples, or Rome, he would not speak to them in Venetian, but in Italian, as they would have difficulty understanding the Venetian language. But why say language and not dialect? Venetian and Italian are both languages. They, separately, developed from Latin. Venetian and Italian also both have several dialects. The dialects of Venetian are simply named Eastern, Central, Western, Northern, and North Central, and they all differ slightly from each other due to the natural evolution of language. The dialects of Italian are more confusing. Because Italian is widely spoken throughout Italy, it has been influenced by Italy's many languages. So when our man from Venice speaks in Italian to the tourist from Naples, he still might do so with a Venetian accent. That is to say, his Italian has been influenced by Venetian. And depending on how strong his accent is, it might take longer for the tourist from Naples to get used to. Similarly, when the tourist responds, he might do so with a Neapolitan accent that the Venetian man will have to get used to. On the other hand, if the man spoke in Venetian and the tourist spoke in Neapolitan, they wouldn't be able to understand each other. The languages are too distinct. These are two examples of diglossia happening in parallel, where two languages exist on a sliding scale. In Italy, depending on how strict you are with your definition of dialect and language, there are about 25 spoken languages. Of these 25, only 11 have statewide recognition. Some Italians consider those that are grayed out as dialects of Italian, a totally nonsense statement. Each of them developed from Latin in their own way. Italian didn't give birth to Venetian, they are siblings. Today, regional languages are becoming less common as people drop their local language in favor of Italian. This occurs for a multitude of reasons. Maybe they think their language is inferior to Italian and are embarrassed by it, or they simply don't see the utility in their language and so don't teach it to their children. This loss in linguistic diversity is not a uniquely Italian problem. Similar attitude towards and treatment of minority languages happen all over Europe, but this isn't a European problem either. Loss of linguistic diversity is happening on a global scale. Sometimes languages do fall out of use naturally. They merge with other languages or split to create new ones, like how Latin gave birth to Tuscan, French, and Romanian. Other times, language death is unnecessary and preventable. I think we are at a critical point where we need to decide whether languages like Tuscan, Venetian, Lombard, Ligurian, Piedmontese, Sicilian, Neapolitan, Occitan, and a vast array of others should continue to be spoken, or if we should let them die preventable deaths. For many languages out there, it's not too late, but it soon will be. When I look at this map, I don't think it's terrible. Italy offers more protection for, say, Arpitan and Occitan than do France or Switzerland. Still, personally, when I look at this map, I see an injustice. Why should someone born in Naples be given the impression that their country sees the language that they speak as inferior to the national language, a mere dialect, not even worthy of recognition? So when the time comes that they have children, they don't even bother speak to them in the language, creating people who have an integral part of their culture and identity missing. I don't have a solution. I just know that when I look at this map, I see an injustice.